as the colonies had to secede from King George.
If you ever want to get your stamina and you actually want to slog your way through Jefferson Davis's book, I had to do that for my dissertation. I think the eye twitch is gone now. I'm sorry, that book was just horrid, you know. But that's what he argues, page after page after page. Yeah, then that's time again. That's what he's saying.
The twitch is coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I guess we're not going to sell that set of
Sorry.
A couple of questions have come in. I want to ask though very quickly about this because I'm curious. Pamphlets, after Gutenberg especially, pamphlets were one of the main areas of getting political thought out there. Yeah. And Art, you talk about three especially in your book. You do. And one is the Bates book, a pamphlet on habeas corpus. Curtis on executive power, especially vis-a-vis.
It was actually not Bates. That was Reverdy Johnson. Bates just issued an opinion.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
And Johnson.
Sorry.
And then Speed on the military commission issue on the conspirators that was past Lincoln, but nonetheless, were these pamphlets that when they were issued, and so many of them were issued during the war, not just these three, zillions of them, were they effective?
The Speed one, by the way, also was not a pamphlet. That was an Attorney General's opinion that came out
as a pamphlet.
after.
Well, that's how I see it.
After they were.
Yeah.
One of the most prominent and one of the most effective pamphlets was by former Supreme Court Justice Curtis, who was pro-union, anti-slave, wrote the profound dissent in the Dred Scott case, and he wrote a pamphlet after the Emancipation Proclamation, and went after. I mean, here's a guy with, as they say today, cred.
Yeah.
He had lots of cred, and he went after Lincoln.
Well,
and
cred in the anti-slavery community because he wrote the dissenting opinion in the
that's
Dred
what
Scott.
you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he pro-union, anti-slave, Dred Scott, and here he said, Lincoln, what the hell are you doing? You are violating civil liberties. He had a wonderful line, something about how can we go after the South for them not obeying the law when you are violating the law here? An executive has executive power only. An executive cannot repeal laws or make laws. What are you doing? That's a powerful pamphlet.
So what happened after
And
that?
he certainly nothing.
Lincoln just went on.
Yeah, because he had a war.
A couple of questions that come in, kind of analogous, so I'm going to say them both. Do either of you see analogies to modern times, any comparison to lawyers in today's government? The other one was, what event or confluence of events, in your opinion, led to the gradual shift away from law as a leading profession among our political leadership after the war? Why do we have barbers now instead?
Well, first, on the first one, I think the lawyers were different today and then. Today, you tend to be more narrow, you're sort of cocooned into specialties, and so many of the lawyers, at least where I come from in Washington, are lobbyists, and whereas the lawyers in those days were real lawyers. They litigated cases against each other, for each other, with each other, and so on, and it was a more engaged band. They were the leaders of the community. Now they're looked down upon, but they were the leaders of the community then. Sorry, I lost the second part of the other question.
I did too.
Oh yeah, how come we don't have lawyers to the degree in Congress that we did then?
Yes.
Why are the bakers in front? And I think for the same reason that our politics have shifted so much too. But then the lawyers were the only educated people.
Yeah, I think that's what
Doctors,
I would say
but
too.
the lawyers,
yeah.
They were educated in some way.
Yeah.
So the uneducated should be represented in Congress.
Well, I mean, I said this in my book, Lincoln the Lawyer, that if you think about it, he wants to be a professional, and he has. Going back to your point, he has far fewer choices. I mean, we have so many different levels. We have a professional political stratum that didn't even exist back then, and the law was one of the few professions you could go into back then that required relatively little capital outlay. You don't have to go to law school. You don't have to go pay anybody anything. Just kind of trade your labor to a lawyer to read in his office. So it's a little more democratic back then and brings people into the public realm that might not otherwise be there. I mean, Tocqueville kind of made that point too, I think.
At the time of the founding of the Constitution in the first 40 years or so, in contrast to Europe, where an enterprising, young, ambitious man without great wealth or connections had two avenues to succeed. He could go in the ministry, or he could go in the military.
Yeah.
we had no established church, and we had virtually no army.
Yeah.
So the only opportunity was exactly as you said. There were no bars to entry. You didn't have to go to law school. You just showed up, basically.
Seriously.
And so it was a wonderful way to go in.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite stories about Lincoln is when he was serving as a bar examiner for his circuit, and the judge sent this young man over to Lincoln and said, well, Lincoln's staying over that hotel room. Go. He's going to examine you. So the guy shows up, and Lincoln opens the door. He's still shaving. Okay, says sit down on the bed, and he's shaving. Asks him a few questions. He gets done. Lincoln whips out a piece of paper and writes down, "Give this young man a law license. He's a good deal smarter than he looks." That is the legal culture in a nutshell, right there. Oh yeah.
You know, from your Constitution book and writing that, what were his basic views on the Constitution, and did they change over his lifetime, especially during the war?
Yes, I argue in this book, and by the way, I didn't plan to have two books out at once. It was a total accident.
It's very impressive.
No, yeah, my wife didn't see me for a year almost. It was nuts. I had signed the contract for the second book before the first. That kind of measure. Anyway, his basic view in the Constitution, I believe, was, as I point out, the elasticity of the Constitution. I argue that he, as a lawyer and a politician in the 1850s, is very much a Hamiltonian, very much a broad constructionist interpreter of the Constitution, but not in an overly expansive way. And then during the war, his view of the Constitution is that it should be able to expand when it needs to, habeas corpus, for example, but also contract. He's careful about what he will allow the Constitution to do. For him, it's a living instrument in many ways. And I argue that he does, on the whole, with some missteps, a pretty masterful job of creating a sense of the Constitution as being in the service of a higher order. Before the war, it was the Declaration. He makes this case for the Constitution, he says, being the frame of silver for the Declaration's apple of gold, and the frame is made for the apple, not the other way around. But then during the war, I argued that the higher purpose of the Constitution for him shifts from the Declaration to the Union, and eventually freedom and emancipation and that sort of thing. So yeah, his views evolve over time from that early Hamiltonian view to kind of a more sophisticated, balanced view of what the Constitution is supposed to do in American society. Yeah.
There's a lot that we haven't gone over, period, in all these books. Something I just want to, since we're getting near the end, something I want to ask you very briefly about the revenge trials, as you say, the trials of the execution of the four for conspiring against Lincoln to kill him, and others that were sent down to the Dry Tortugas.
Just Dr. Mudd went to the Dry Tortugas, I think.
No, all four went down.
That's
there.
right. Yeah. Sorry.
And they were.
He got out.
Yeah, they all got out
Yeah,
after the smallpox down there. My question though is, should it have been a military commission or not? I think you come down on it in here, but to me, it seems that a sitting war president, commander-in-chief, with a couple of armies still out in the field, and he's assassinated. Cannot that be a military assassination versus something political?
Well, that, of course, is exactly the position that Stanton and Speed, Speed, the Attorney
Maybe
General.
I was turned by them.
The Attorney General said not only could they be tried by military commission, but they should be.
Yeah.
And I think it was Stanton that wanted them all hanged before Lincoln was buried. This is not exactly pure justice here.
No, but
do
think
I
about
think they should have
9/11.
had
I'm just to say this. I think about 9/11 and how we felt that day and afterwards. If we could have caught any of those guys right then, I'm not sure what would have happened either.
But the goal of civil society, is not to exercise revenge.
Right.
It's to be just.
Yep.
And so I think it was a mistake, and I want to emphasize, I'm not talking today about military commissions. The military jurisprudence is extraordinary today. Military justice is not an oxymoron today, but it was then, and it was a revenge. It was terrible.
They were shooting generals that were Union to the hilt, and they were ready to do what needed to be done. They felt. I'm going to have you sign a few books here.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Put you to work while I shout out to some people and thank
Why
them.
don't you sign mine and I'll sign yours?
That happened once.
Did it?
I want to thank some of you who have, won't be able to get to all of you, who help support virtual book signing, and the publishers bringing good authors like this in and good discussions. So Hugh in Parker, Colorado, Dan in Downers Grove, Illinois, Robert in Richmond, Virginia, Bruce in Manhattan, Kansas, Art in Fort Worth, Todd in Atlanta. Just to take us out very quickly, very briefly, because this is completely off everything, Tom has asked, what historical inaccuracies in movies or books irk you to the most and need correction? Of course, Vampire Hunter is truth.
If one more student sends me a trailer for Lincoln Vampire Hunter, I'm going to have my head blow off. I'm not kidding.
We had the author of the book in here, Seth Graham-Smith, and actually, it was a pretty good book.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. This is like fun.
But I just saw the trailer 2 days ago, and I was really looking forward to this. I don't know. Now I'm not so looking forward.
Did you see
anymore.
the review yesterday in the Wall Street Journal?
Was it
Yes.
good or bad?
No, 2 stars and not
Well,
even
no,
that.
it's worth noting we have a very serious movie about Lincoln coming out in December from Steven Spielberg, starring Daniel
25.
Day-Lewis, that, from what I'm hearing, is going to be spectacular. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, I can't wait to look over his shoulder.
Yeah.
The Conspirators, the disaster
Yeah.
of the film,
Which the ABA helped that.
was just, I thought it was terrible. They missed so many opportunities to get some really interesting excitement, and they blew so many fundamental things in it.
Yeah, it's really a shame because that was a possibility of being
He's done some very good stuff.
and it wasn't so bad from a lawyerly point of view in a way, but historically, it just didn't go.
Yeah.
Oh well. Well, we're so happy to have had Art Downey in with his Civil War lawyer's book. I think this is an important book, and there's so many things we did not get to in that book. Not only Revenge Trial,
Like
Jeff
Basharov,
Davis.
I think that's
and-
amazing. You
Well, we
caught
got
that.
Basharov in, but we didn't get many other things. And the John Brown trial, the Sea War, and the prize cases, Samuel Mudd and others in there, and Robert Todd Lincoln as well got in there. And there's so much we didn't get into, Brian, as well as your book. This also is an important book, Abraham Lincoln and White America, because it has not been seen before. I think we should look at how Lincoln felt inside his own skin, and I think miraculously how he got out of that skin. And the Constitution book as well, Brian, is another one that is important in the whole concise
It's a great
series.
series.
It
It's
is,
an awesome
and I think
series.
everyone should
Yeah.
have this on the whole series on, because it's an easy, accessible way of understanding certain issues, and then if you want to go further, there are more books to do that. So, I want to thank you all for being with us today online, and those of you who have come in as well out of the sun. The staff at Abraham Lincoln Bookshop, this wouldn't happen without you, and I think this was a wonderful time. So thank you both,
Thank you.
Brian and
Thank
Art,
you.
for
Thank
being
you.
here, and your publishers for bringing you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and come back again.